Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Green Bay Packers all-time leading rusher, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. You can email us, PackersTotalAccess@gmail.com. You can also text us at 865-658-5824. We're flying solo as of the moment. I believe all the guys are prepping for Valentine's Day, which is a really smart move. I'm sure that's what Tim's doing. I know that's what Emilio's doing. He may join us here shortly. Jacob's trying to decide who he's prepping Valentine's Day for. He's got to go down the list and figure out which one that he's going to target this Valentine's Day. So with that being said, let's give a shout out to everybody in the chat. We got Greg Rice in the house. We got Jake Shavink, too old for this. Daryl in the house. Chris in. Everybody following in. Appreciate y'all making us part of your evening. Holmes, MD1. We got Dane Stromstad, United Bates. Too old for this. Love it. Appreciate you guys. Just hit that like on your way in if you don't mind, guys. And feel free, if this is the first time you've watched this show, hit sub on your way in as well. And if you you don't like the content, just keep notifications off. No big deal. But we appreciate you supporting us. Let's go to the chat right off the bat. Greg Rice says, hey, Clayton, if you get a chance, I would like for you to explain one back, one gap. Does that mean one running back, one gap, or something else? That's exactly what it means, Greg. It's a term that doesn't get used often. And excuse me for the sniffling and everything. You guys know how it is, man. The weather changes every other day. So I'll try not to sound disgusting on the podcast here. But one back, one gap. You heard Matt LaFleur talk about it last year. And essentially what it means is if you've got two running backs in the backfield, many defenses will switch to a two-gap scheme. No matter if they're running a 34 jam front or if they're in a 4-3 base, okay? Or if you're in a 4-3 under, sometimes you'll go to a two gap. If you're in a 4-3 over, you'll go to a two gap sometimes. It depends on the defensive coordinator and how aggressive they want to be towards the running game and really getting after the passer. But like last year, I think it was when we played the Steelers, Matt LaFleur mentioned it. He talked about how the media exposes themselves when they're talking about, is it this two gap system? He's like, when it's one back, it's actually one gap. So he it was no like big shocker to us because we're constantly watching the tape. Many people just heard 3-4 defense and they immediately think two gap system. And like we had pointed out all year long last year, when you're in the nickel 4-2-5, the majority of the time, at the time it was a nickel 2-4-5, you weren't two gapping much. And the reason being is if you've got two backs in the backfield, whether it's a split backfield or an I formation, you've got to account for another body in the backfield, so you're losing a hat, essentially, right? So you want those defensive linemen to play a little more conservative and control two gaps to allow your defense to get into the position of what we call center mass, right? The impact zone of the run. And there's some teams that even though it's a one back, they'll go two gap, right? But that's what we mean by one back equals one gap, two backs equal two gaps. Because if you're in a split backfield, you may give it to, like when you're in a split backfield, I think it's 2 and 4 is the number. Let me see. I got my notes here. Emilio's really good at this stuff. Him having a football background. I may have already taken it off of my cheat sheet here. I believe I did actually. Here we go. So when you're in a split backfield, right, you'll go 2 is your halfback. And if it's a split back, 4 is your right halfback, your right running back, essentially, right? So if you give it to the left running back in a split backfield from the offense's perspective, that guy's numbered as 2. The guy on the right's numbered as 4. And what that means, essentially, and the reason you'll go to a two-gap system is you don't know who's going to get that ball. You got to be prepared to try to, at a bare minimum, maintain the hat count in your scheme of getting to that running back and taking on the blockers and gap assignments, okay? If there's one gap or one back, you can be more aggressive. Okay, if he goes right, if it's an A gap right run or a B gap right run, everyone knows their gap that they're responsible for. But if you got two backs in the backfield, you got to be prepared to kick out for that stretch either side or even a B gap kind of zone run. So it's a little deeper than that. We won't spend the whole show trying to break it down. That's what they meant by that, though. And I think it was all Greg was asking is when you say one back, one gap, do you mean one running back, one gap? Absolutely. That's what we're talking about. So it depends on the defensive coordinator and how you want to attack it. It depends on the scheme, too. like the offensive scheme. If they're strictly a gap run team and they don't run a lot of zone, you may attack it differently as well. But that's what we mean by that. And again, it's the reason that Matt LaFleur got on the media last year about that, as well as the only having 2 defensive linemen, right, is because the outside linebackers were edge defenders. Essentially, they're defensive ends. They're just standing up. And, we talked about on the show many times. I'm trying to think of the guy. It was Wade Phillips, defensive coordinator. I remember the press conference where he said this in Dallas, where he was sitting there at the table with Jerry, like Jerry always got to be on the pressers and everything. And they asked him, DeMarcus Ware, are you thinking about putting his hand in the dirt as opposed to standing up? And he said, you want me to show you the difference between that? And he literally stood up from the table and he went, this and this. And he put his hand down. He said, that's it. It's the same responsibilities. Some people like to play standing up. Others like to play with their hand in the dirt. But what Matt pointed out last year, he's like, and he got frustrated with the media and he kind of scoffed at him, was like, you guys are really exposing yourself. And I understand why Matt took that stance. I understand why coaches get frustrated with the media, because some of them, not all, not many really, a minute amount, like to write articles as if, man, these guys are idiots for only having 2 down linemen. Like they're getting ran all over. And the coaches are like, you know what, let me just go ahead and expose them real quick. Buddy, hate to break it to you, but we've actually got 4 defensive linemen. 2 of them are just standing up, and they're technically linebackers. So that kind of comes into play there with that whole conversation as well. Greg Rice says, also, I watched the top 7 defensive line today. Graham is a monster, but I would take them all. This is such a heavy defensive line draft, man. It's wild. Like Dane Brugler, if I were to sort his draft board here on the surface, let's see how many he's got in the top 50. He's got Mason Graham at 4, Derek Harmon 19, Kenneth Grant 26, Walter Nolan 29, Tyleik Williams 33, Alfred Collins 47. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 interior defensive linemen in the top 50 on his big board. In the top 100, you've got 56 Shamar Turner out of Texas A&M, 60 TJ Sanders, 67 Darius Alexander, 73 Jordan Phillips, 76 Deion Walker. I'm gonna change his name to Deion Green, since that's Tim's guy right there. That's his adopted son. 78 Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee. He's an interesting one. We showed you guys the chart earlier, the graphic earlier, where he was way up and to the right on pass rush win rate as well as run stop rate. Joshua Farmer's another interesting prospect as well. He's in the 88 spot. So this is a draft that's just loaded at defensive line. It really is. Now, when you talk about Graham, and I'm trying to think, I believe it was Daryl here in the chat says Graham might be a 5 to 10 pick. I don't see him falling down the board because of his production. Got to go with the second or third best option. Could not agree more. I don't see any scenario, and you don't say this often when it comes to pro football, but I don't see any scenario where Mason Graham falls to 23. There's just, I would just about bet the farm there's zero chance that happens. And it's rare that you say that about prospects, but that's why we've been mentioning him. Like, man, according to our board, and it could be wrong, he's up there with the same grade of the top of like Aiden Hutchinson, guys like that, Myles Garrett, people like that. He's kind of fallen in that range right now for us. Now, it could change. I don't know what could change it. There could be some catastrophic things that happen, but Mason Graham's a stud. I just don't see him being there. And in contrast to what Dane Brugler has here, he's got Mason Graham at 4. So does the PFF big board. He's got Derek Harmon at 19. PFF big board has Walter Nolan at 19. And then he's got Kenneth Grant at 26. PFF big board has Kenneth Grant at 23. All right. And then the next one is Tyleik Williams at 33. PFF big board has Tyleik Williams at 28. And Alfred Collins at 47 for Dane Brugler. And the PFF big board has Alfred Collins at 68. So when you get outside of those like top 4 or 5 defensive linemen, that's when people start to kind of part ways in their opinion of them, So it's going to be interesting to see how these defensive tackles play, go in the draft and obviously extend their careers into the NFL. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. 2-0 for this says, evening everyone, longest week ever, but it'll be good to hang out with y'all even if this show sucks. Hey, amen to that. Appreciate you 2-0 for this. Thanks for swinging through, buddy. I hear you, man. We were at the hospital all day long, only to have an appointment canceled. So we got to go back in the morning. There won't be a morning show. I apologize, guys, but we'll definitely do an evening show tomorrow night. We got Emilio joining us now. Emilio, we've been prepping for Valentine's Day, bro. Are we good to go?
We have. Yeah, I'm going to have to get up a little early and just finish it up just because I won't see her tomorrow night. So, get a little surprise in there. Chocolates, flowers, the classic.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I can't say too much. Mandy's probably watching the show right now.
So yeah, I can. She's working. I maybe out there get a little scavenger hunt going. A little rhyme, something like that. Just keep them entertained. You gotta just some old jokes between you two. That sort of stuff. That's what you need.
The scavenger hunt ends in the kitchen with a frying pan and something for her to cook. But don't go that route.
Don't go that route. I know Jacob's already tried that one, and that's one off the list. But yeah, better get ready.
Like I said earlier, man, you were prepping for Valentine's Day. It's probably what Tim's doing. Jacob's trying to decide which one to prep for Valentine's Day.
I got you right here.
Going down the list.
Right there on the old tag there. That's for you, Clay.
Who's on Rusty's list? I love it. My man. And will they survive through the night? That's the
truth. You never know.
All right, Jake Shavink in the house said, excited to see who these corners are in Clayton's polls. I only found one of 4 that match the numbers. Ooh. We're going to get to that. So let's jump into Twitter real quick and start there. Whoa. And let's see, we get that adjusted for you. There you go, sir. Can't be having your mug covered up there. Let's go straight to Twitter. There's a couple things I wanted to hit on here, and then we'll get into what Jake mentioned there for sure. So obvious, the big talk around Travis Hunter has been, is he going to be a receiver or a corner? I don't think anybody's surprised here, Emilio, but my buddy Andy on Twitter, great follow, by the way, does just an excellent job with NFL draft coverage. Colorado two-way superstar Travis Hunter is attending the NFL Combine as a cornerback. So He has made that, let everybody know, informed everyone, I'm going to be there as a corner, so we can kind of probably move on from that. It doesn't mean he's not going to play receiver in the NFL. I highly doubt he's going to play much receiver, if any at all. But man, oh man, Emilio, that was my childhood, was watching Charles Woodson at Michigan play both ways.
Right.
And then, of course, Cordell Stewart was my favorite player growing up. My brother was a Steelers fan. So in the 90s, I was a Steelers fan, just kind of, didn't know anything about NFL. But Cordell Stewart lining up at receiver, coming in at quarterback, playing halfback, he punted. Like, it was just really fun watching those type of players. Deion Sanders was exciting when he would play on both sides of the ball. It seems like the game's changed here, man. But if anybody's proven they could probably do it in today's football game, it's Travis Hunter, man.
Right, it's crazy because, that's what you're doing growing up from Pee Wee up, right? You're running two ways. I was defense, long snapper. Anywhere you can get on, you want to play. So you're two ways all the way through high school. If you're that good, you're that good of an athlete. You get into college, you got to pick a side. You're not going to have enough time to, 1, learn the playbook, 2, get into – think about it. You have 2-hour practice. You got, offense, defense drills, break those up. Then you got to go into your sub drills for your, DBs, linebackers, all that. Then you're over there working on corner. You haven't been in the offense for 2 days because you've been playing corner. You've been practicing corner for whoever you're going up against that week. So I think that it is, super impressive. No wonder he got the Heisman. I was going to ask you on the GM Shuffle. I haven't listened to it in a couple of days, but previously they were asking, how much would you play how much would you play Travis? Or I think it was also move the sticks. Are you going to play him strict, bring him in as a wide receiver, as a corner? And how many snaps would you let him have on the opposite side of the field per game, if I were to get a number from you?
Man, me personally, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. Now, it depends on the roster, right? Whoever drafts him. And Dane Brugler has him number 1. PFF has him number 1. We have him number 1. Daniel Jeremiah has him number 1.
Yep.
He's the best prospect in the draft, according to anyone that, everyone that I respect that covers the draft. Me personally, I think there would be more value for him at the cornerback position.
I agree.
As a returner. And I don't know a whole lot about Travis Hunter's return ability, but I know this. If you spend a number 1 draft choice on a player and you put him out there at corner, and then let's say you do run a few snaps a game. Let's say you do 10 snaps on offense a game, and he gets hurt on offense, I would not be able to live with myself, man. You know what I mean? I feel like you're more likely to get hurt playing receiver than you are playing corner. and I don't have any data to break that up. I'm just to back that up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just simply saying, like,
off the gut,
one side you're engaging the contact, you're watching the play develop. On the other side, your head is turned away from a safety that's going to take it off, or a backer across the middle.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me personally. And again, if it's Madden, Emilio, and you could turn the injuries off, I want to see him play every snap. I think that's exciting. That's awesome. I hope he plays both sides. I'm just saying, if I was the GM, if I was the head coach, and I invested a number 1 overall pick into a guy who's going to play corner and or wide receiver, I'm probably going to try to press him into corner because I felt like that's where his most value was.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not want him to get hurt,
So I agree on pressing him into corner. I think that is his, strong suit for sure. I think they had a number at about 20 offensive snaps. They'd let him get into 20. So you think about, say there's 60 aside in a normal game, 120. He's been running that no problem in college, right? So that's if he's playing every snap, both sides. I think that he could definitely handle 20. I'm probably with you in between 10 and 20-ish. And it's kind of just to keep him honest too. It's not like you need to throw the guy every single time he's out there, but if we got him running a route, you got the defense. You think about it. Remember when we brought Keyshawn in, even though it was just a quick reverse, you don't even know he's in there. But I think that he could tear it up at wide receiver. I think whoever is going to draft him is probably going to give him. I think he's going to play both ways for at least a year or two, just to see. I don't think they're not gonna. I think he's going to be in their hip like, hey, you brought me in here. We were the first overall pick for a reason. Like, let me do something to help this team. And I think that's kind of what you want on, your drive for a player.
Right. And you don't want to harness a player. I understand that completely. And Coach Prime talked over and over and over about it's everything in me to make sure this kid stays healthy and doesn't get overworked, but he wants to be on the field every damn snap.
Right.
That's who he is. And to me, that makes him an even better prospect, just wanting to be. You could tell he loves the game of football.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I understand, you correct me if I'm wrong, it's like Coach Prime practically helped raise him. Like he's coached him from a young child, right? If I understand.
My understanding, yeah.
So, it's going to be a lot of fun. And listen, I grew up. I was taught to hate Deion Sanders as a player. My brother was a Steelers fan. I remember my brother telling me specifically as a young kid, Rod Woodson is how you play the game. He's a corner that's physical. He's willing to tackle. Deion, he ain't willing to tackle. He's a pansy. He's all about the money, the flash. Rod Woodson just blue collar. So I was always swayed in my opinion away from Deion. But him as a coach, man, he's just – you can tell he cares about the kids. He cares about doing things the right way, not just winning ball games, and what he's done with that program too.
Right.
It's just wild stuff. Yeah. Shavink says he's wide receiver 1 if he went wide receiver only, in my opinion.
Sure.
I completely agree, Jake. He's got to be, right?
He'd probably be running back 1. He'd probably be safety 1. He'd probably, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. As Greg Rice said here too, that's the best way to put it. It was fun hating Prime. It really was, man. And especially when he was high stepping down the sideline, holding that ball up like a loaf of bread,
mm-hmm.
It was frustrating as an opposing fan, I guess you could say. So, all right, let's move along here. Just wanted to mention that because that will kind of steer the draft there a little bit, I believe. I think that was important information. A little bit of Aaron Rodgers news here, just because, again, this may play a role in where Davante Adams lands, and that's why we're kind of keeping our eye on it. So Aaron Rodgers watch has officially begun, as they mentioned earlier today. Around the NFL on X said Jets owner Woody Johnson on moving on from Aaron Rodgers, quote, "I will forever be grateful that he chose to join us to continue his Hall of Fame career." Ian Rappaport, a quote, tweeted that, say clarity on what's next for Aaron Rodgers per NFL rules. Quote, "If a club announces that they are terminating a vested veteran, other clubs are able to talk to him. No tryout or signing is permitted. Rodgers won't be officially released until the league year, but talks can happen." And there's rumors that, and I'm pretty sure that's how it'll happen, it'll be a post-June 1 cut. But they're going to officially release him with a post-June 1 cut so he can talk to teams as early as right now, it sounds like. So he's been given permission to seek, a new team. So that's probably going to increase the chances of him playing this year as opposed to if he wasn't allowed to talk to teams, But I just wanted to mention that because wherever he lands, I think there's a decent shot that Devontae Adams could follow him there, right? At least a chance anyway. Now, he could retire too, but anything you want to add to that conversation there? Because that's going to be one of the big names, obviously, this offseason.
Oh, definitely. And I think that just kind of keeps open the chance of, the Rams, the Steelers, anything, honestly. And like you said, giving him that option now, veteran, knows what he's doing, has, been in and out of training camps. So I think he's good either way. But good for him. If I'd rather, it end on a good year, he goes out with a winning record or something like that, just to, button it all up. But I just can't wait for him to come back and hang the jersey, really.
Yeah, me too, man. It'll kind of turn that page. Here's the other thing I want to say, and I know I'm going to catch y'all for this, and I don't care. I try to give my honest opinion on here. I don't try to create controversial statements. I don't try to agree with people just to prevent disagreement. I think disagreement's great. That's when I've learned the most in my life, is when I find someone who disagrees with my stance and makes me actually question it, right? Some of the best preachers I've ever had, people that I lean on in faith, are people that say, test your faith. Don't just go up, yeah, this is the way it is. No, question it. Try to pick it apart, because you're going to find out you're going to be even more galvanized because you can't pick it apart, things like that. If you go in with a mindset like that, I just feel like you're more open-minded. You can learn a lot more. But yeah, it's I'm trying to think of where I was going there. I got preachy. What was it we were just talking about? Not Aaron. Gosh, what was it? There was something tied to Aaron. It left me. Daggum it.
Well, while it left you, let me ask you this question. Too old for this. Says, I think Tate comes back to Green Bay before following Rodgers again.
It could happen. That's the thing too. Like, it wasn't like it went good with the Jets, right? Maybe Tate does have that bad taste in his mouth. Like, that didn't work out.
Right.
Let's try something else. It just feels to me like he's probably going to end up on the West Coast. I'd love to have him in Green Bay for the right price, no doubt about it. But yeah. Anyway, let's move it along. If that comes to me, I'll let you guys know. I had a point there. I'm trying to think of what it was, but man, it's been a long day. I fell asleep in a chair in the hospital about 3 times today. Woke up long enough to go over to the cafe and get a brownie, and then ate that and had another sugar crash. And just so, anyway, here was the question Jake Shavink was talking about. All right, and we got a lot of votes here. It looks like I haven't refreshed it, so there's probably a lot more than that now. But I said, which cornerback would you prefer to have on the Green Bay Packers roster in 2025? And I think this is going to surprise a lot of people. Player 1, he had a 69.0 passer rating allowed. Okay, so when he was targeted, the quarterback's passer rating was a 69. All right. 8.7 yards per target. And these are all per NFL Pro. Okay. And a cap hit of right around $1 million. And I tried to bend the cap just a little bit so people couldn't blatantly see who I was talking about. So understand the cap hits are in the ballpark. And really it's more about who would you rather have in general as opposed to a specific player. But we're going to mention the specific players. Player 2, Emilio. 77.6 passer rating allowed, 8.1 yards per target, and his cap hit $25 million. All right. So player 1 had a better passer rating when targeted. He had a slightly worse yards per target. They both had 2 interceptions, but the one up top is $24 million cheaper than the second player. Now, obviously, the public is all over player 1. They're saying for that price, that whatever it is, 6/10 of a yard, whatever you want to call it, right, is not worth that extra money, right? Do you know who these players are, Emilio?
I will guess player 1 is our boy C. Val from Kentucky.
Yes, sir.
And player 2, I would assume, would be Ja.
That is correct. See, I've been mixing and matching potential free agents and Green Bay Packers.
I like that.
Guys, Carrington Valentine had a better year last year than Jair Alexander did. And Jair Alexander played far fewer snaps.
Right.
And I know some people, well, I don't know, maybe he didn't. Let me double check that because Carrington didn't play a whole lot early. I could be wrong there. 516 snaps for Carrington Valentine. Yeah, he played more snaps. He played almost 200 more snaps
than Jair.
Jair.
Gotcha.
So it's not like, Jair playing less should help these numbers. The more snaps you play, it should be a little more passer rating allowed. It should be a little more yards per target, right? Yeah. Because, it's a larger sample size typically. So Carrington, Valentine, both of them having 2 interceptions. And if anyone says, well, player 2 was hurt, you didn't get a full sample, is that a good thing for player 2 that he was hurt? I don't think it was, So obviously I'd pick player 1 as well. That is Carrington, Valentine versus Jair Alexander.
And both of them, 2 picks, right? You said they both had 2 picks, even though Ja had 200 less snaps. I mean, we were there for that one.
That's a stat.
We were there for that one, right? But I mean, and that's where we talked about last night. If it wasn't for, if the restructure hurt us, I would say let the dude run out and just play. But let's restructure him. Let's get a little bit cash back. Let's give him some guaranteed. He's been through the injury bug. Let's make him feel a little better. Like, Ja, we still want you in Green Bay playing for this team. But we need a little bit of help back this way. And then go out there with Valentine and Keyshawn and everybody else. We're going to pick up a new 3-tech and we're off. Let Travis Glover tear it up at tackle and we're cooking.
Right. And the other thing too is Jair has played good for a long time, right? Like pretty much his whole career. Yeah. He's been somewhere between, I don't know if he ever scored elite, but he's been somewhere between great and good or very good. Carrington Valentine, on the other hand, bad year last year, this year looking better, right? And obviously outperforming Jair in one of his less productive years. So you got to take that into account too if you were to lay out the entire scenario. I like to just key in on the most recent body of work, just like we did with Rashawn Gary and Max Crosby. If you look at Max Crosby's entire career compared to Rashawn Gary's, you're taking Max Crosby. But if you look at just last year, you got to really step back and go, damn, Rashawn Gary played better than Max Crosby last year. So that's why I'm okay with getting Max Crosby opposite of Rashawn Gary for the right price, of course.
Right.
I'd much rather that money and draft picks go into multiple swings at 3-tech, but that's just me. So, again, if anything, what this does for me, Emilio, and we'll get your final take on it, we'll move on. It gives me hope that, you know what, if Ja does leave and we can't, if the board doesn't fall just right for us to go get a solid starting corner, I like where Carrington Valentine's going. I thought he showed promise down the stretch. I really did. He was one of the best corners in the NFL down the stretch. He really was.
Right.
I was critical as hell of Carrington Valentine his rookie year.
Right.
You got to remember, I was like, hey, guys, I'm a Kentucky fan, but this kid probably ain't it. Boy, did he shut me up last year.
Coming out of a 7th-round pick, I think that's huge. I think that we have the potential for that for Kalen King, next time or this coming year, right? If he steps up, he's seen what Val's done, what he can do, what he can become. I think that's a possibility. But you're right. If Ja does leave, we still have options. We still have Keyshawn. We still have Carrington. I mean, Carrington's got us through two years, right? Like when we had our old defensive coordinator when we were in trouble, Carrington got us through. And now our new defensive coordinator, he got us through there as well. So the dude's ready to play. He's always willing. I think that it's a great deal. He's trying to make money too. He wants to be player 2 at one point, not numbers wise, but he wants that cap hit. So I do think that that's something that will always drive him and kind of keep him playing at a high level.
Right. Now I want to say this. You mentioned Keyshawn Nixon, and I'm with you, man. I thought Keyshawn played good. I didn't think he was great, but I thought at times he was good, and obviously he played better on the boundary. But I'm going to give you his comparison to these two, and I think it's going to shock you a little bit. It shell-shocked me a little bit, man. It really did. Let's see here. So that would have been 92 targets. Make sure I'm doing this right. If you want to hit something in the chat, feel free to. If not, I'll try to get these numbers together really quick.
Yeah, let's see.
It's kind of off the rails in there.
yeah, it really has. I'm trying to walk through it carefully. Daryl said Valentine outperformed Stokes on every snap. That's why his PFF grades are above average. That's true. I mean, and it's not like we haven't tried with Stokes. I mean, we gave him his full 4 years. What I like is, let's give everybody else a chance like we gave Stokes. Obviously, he came back from the injury. I'm happy that he's returned and able to play in the NFL after suffering that kind of – I mean, it was ugly. So nothing against him. But it's just the point of like, hey, everyone wants LVN gone at this point because he's not turning up. I mean, we've given Stokes a chance. I feel like that we got to be consistent kind of throughout with that.
Yeah, and the reason I didn't include Keyshawn Nixon is because I knew the numbers were much closer between Carrington and Jair, and I wanted to see if people would sway towards Carrington, and obviously they did, probably mainly because of the money. If the money was flipped, people would probably have chose player 2, right? But with Keyshawn Nixon, his yards per target was 6.1. So that was significantly better, right? But his passer rating when targeted, and keep in mind, I'm sure touchdowns really sway this because it seemed like he did give up a few touchdowns. I don't know if it's got that statistic or not.
I feel like I remember most of those chalk talks were a fade route or an out route or a flare, something like that, and it was key on the backside. Yeah,
Keyshawn's passer rating when targeted, 101.2, right? But he gave up 6 touchdowns is why. That's bad.
And his cap hit was
that's a great question. Let's see here. I got it right here. Keyshawn Nixon's cap hit last year. Actually, this is for 2025. Is $6.8 million. Last year, I want to say it was somewhere around 4.
Okay.
Keyshawn Nixon, I got it right here. I believe.
Oh, man, he really is kind of right in the middle. You're sitting there thinking, all right, Valentine's has 69 passer rating with 8.7 yards at $1 million. Keyshawn is 100 and change passer rating. That would be the highest out of all 3 at 6.9 yards and $4 million cap hit. Then you got Ja at 76.6 passer rating, 8.1 yards, 25 million. You're right. I think that number would have been a lot. That vote would be a lot more tight because you're saying, hey, do I want to give up less than a first down a first down per catch, but if I'm giving up 6 yards, that's cool. But you're getting cooked on the like not Keyshawn's, but like you're getting beat on the backside. That's why your passer rating's that high. Quarterbacks are scoring on you. We can't have that either.
Exactly. And, in a perfect world, you would have Keyshawn Nixon 6.1 yards per target.
Yep. And
then a combination of that passer rating allowed, right? It's obvious that opposing offenses really targeted Keyshawn Nixon in the red zone, though. It became really, really odd, especially a little cheap motion, like you said, back shoulder fade, little slot fade, whatever it is.
And they saw that one that got me was the one where they literally ran the play and there was a timeout or the 2-minute warning. And they knew the play was coming right back to him. And he's still just like, dude, get in front of that. Like, it's coming.
He's out of room. He's out of room. He's at the out of bounds line. They're either throwing him the ball or they're not. Prepare in case they are. Like, I never understand that. And I know it looks silly sometimes when guys are just running with their arms up, but bro, whatever it takes, you're taught that actually. So anyway, so there you go. Just interesting to kind of look at the cornerback room right now. If Ja returns, I would want to see, me personally, Jair on one side and Carrington Valentine on the other until they prove otherwise, right? And, boy, you talking about lighting a fire under Keyshawn Nixon's ass is if Carrington, Valentine, and Hilmer in a camp battle for that outside corner spot, man, you're going to get the best version of Keyshawn Nixon. There's no two ways about it. And if he wins that spot, simultaneously you could have Keyshawn Nixon battling Javon Bullard for the slot, right, and see who's better there. And, again, I personally think Keyshawn Nixon was better as a boundary corner as opposed to a nickel corner, a slot corner.
And if Keyshawn does win that and Ja does stay, then we don't need to chase down corner. We have a backup corner in Carrington Valentine coming out in a dime package, or even nickel if we want to go light nickel and bring out the extra corner and say, Bullard, come off for a minute. And I think that would open us up a lot. That's my only, when we're thinking draft, why would you want to go away from a known commodity? If you could figure out the money issue, why would you want to go away from known commodity? Just let's hope and pray he goes, knock on wood, he's healthy moving forward, not going to hold it against him, figure out the money and go for it. Why would you not do that, saying I have 3 corners that I know what I have? We need to pay attention to, the trenches, whatever in the draft and move forward. That's where I'm like, I just don't know. I know we need to fill the backside, but I would just.
Yeah, Greg Rice says, and this is a great point here too, man. Nixon's starting camp at CB3. He will not be happy. He would not. You know what I say? Tough luck. Go win the damn job. And I'm done with this whole Josh Myers as the starting center. No one competes. I'm done with that. Like, if you're going to have the youngest team in the league, you better let these guys compete, because this whole, well, he's the veteran, he's starting. Get away from me with that crap, man. And if you look at it contract-wise, if Keyshawn did throw a fit, right, let's just see where we're at there. I'm pretty sure we would still be upside down at this point. Actually not. If Keyshawn for some reason threw a fit and caused a stink and you'd have to cut him or trade him, his cap hit is $6.8 million. His dead cap is $4.3 million. So you can free up roughly $2.5 million if you just cut him outright this year. So it's not like, oh crap, we're going to lose money and lose. And I'm not saying Keyshawn would be that guy, right? But I don't want this to be Keyshawn Nixon slander. If anything, and you disagree, tell me if you disagree. I defended Keyshawn probably more than most people did last year. I thought he played well. I thought he did, on the boundary when they kicked him out. There were still people kind of roasting him because he sucked in the slot. I thought he played really good on the boundary.
Mm-hmm. They asked him to do a lot. I mean, he was kind of the glue there that stayed in every time he bounced in for, in and out when we asked him to play the slot and outside. So it's very convenient having somebody that is a multi-tool on offense or defense.
Right. That Milwaukee multi-tool. Daryl in the chat says, no wonder Goody declined Stokes' fifth-year option because Valentine had the potential to be better. Yeah, it kind of feels like that, right? Feels like that on the surface, for sure. Let's see here. Jake Shavink says, makes you think Green Bay might just look for cornerback in the mid-rounds only, maybe nickel day 3 as well.
Because that's what we already have. Kalen King. Let Kalen King come up and play. Let's just replace the practice squad guy and move forward with it. If the practice squad guy is elite, all right, now you get a shot. If he's a Valentine coming out of Kentucky in the 7th round, no problem. But that's where I'm at, just not trying to pull the trigger on one early.
Right. Jake Shavink says, yeah, with what he's saying there with the nickel, that's why Tim, every mock draft we do, what does he say? Give me the safeties. Let's see what safeties has slot experience. Because it's not a guarantee. You know what I mean? You would want your cornerback room to have at least 2 nickel corners, maybe a third. That's kind of that versatile guy. So like he's saying, day 3, and that's exactly where we've looked for him, Jake, is Tim's always, it seems like when we get into the back half of the draft, he's like, hey, put safeties on there. Not that we need a safety, but because there's a lot of safeties with and there's many of them in this draft that's got, slot snaps. And you also got to look at, some of them will have like 80 slot snaps. You go, he's not really a nickel, not really a slot corner. But then you look at the box snaps as well. That kind of bleeds into that same top approach there.
You've got to be willing to come into the box. You have to be. If you're going to be playing nickel, you have to be willing to come into the box.
Right. And if you're playing primarily zone like we did last year, and I'm sure we will do that again this year, we may play more man this year than we did last year, but we'll always play more zone than man. That the only knock of, this is a safety that played 80 snaps in the slot and 200 in the box, so therefore he can be a nickel. If he's in man coverage, he's probably going to struggle. Right. Yeah. And see, there you go. This is what I'm talking about. Jake said, makes you wonder if they dare to take Malachi Starks at 23 if he was there. See, this crossed my mind before, Jake. And on our board, Malachi Starks, let me go sort it by overall. If Malachi Starks is sitting there when we pick at 23, guess where Malachi Starks is on our board, Emilio? 21.
Oh.
He's at 21. So if we go to PFF and just look real quick at Malachi Starks, listen to his snaps. All right, you ready for this? 400 deep, playing post safety, right? Mm-hmm. When I say deep, it can be post, it can be too high shell, but he's playing deep. 215 in the box. All right, well, that ain't slot, Clayton. No, he played 271 snaps in the slot. Bro, if you get Malachi Starks with the 22nd pick, you just drafted a cornerback. Think about that. And you got someone who can play a little safety too. A run defense grade at 85.6. Missed tackle rate is only 8.1. The problem with it is coverage grade 72.1. And you're going, that ain't bad. You're right, it ain't. But it's right underneath the 3/4 mark. So it's not like great over the top, right? But, man, that would be very interesting. Jake, I don't know if you're on board with that or not. I would be, personally, because the board suggests he's worth it. You know,
and what would that do? Being the youngest team, that would bring crazy competition to that slot. I mean, and to post safety. I mean, if the dude's elite to play post safety, all right, Evan Williams, you're coming. I'm like, you're not going to be starting up there. You're coming down. Maybe Javon wants to play post. That would be crazy. Then you get. I mean, there's so many options if you go that route, right? I mean, you really are kind of endless at that point.
And I did not have this on the sheet, on the production sheet for tonight, but I love this conversation. Malachi Starks, according to Dane Brugler, even higher at 14. So even better value there, right? And this right here, Holmes MD1. We have 2 slot corners, Bullard or Nixon. I think cornerback plays there as well. Here's the thing. This is Bill Parcells 101. If you have 2 of them, you don't have one. Just like he used to say, if you got 2 quarterbacks, you ain't got a quarterback. Because you're undecided on which one's better. You're not sold that that's your slot corner. I don't think that Bullard is a slam dunk. He's a good slot corner. Listen, Milio, you've been the president of his fan club. You've been the one to go, hey, guys, he was asked to do a lot, bouncing back and forth. And you put me in check several times, and I'm glad you did it. Tim always put me in check with Quay. You put me in check with Bull, right? But you would not say that he's a top slot corner in the league, correct?
I would not. That is correct.
And if you're in nickel, however much percentage of the time it is, let's say it's on average between 70 and 80% of the snaps every game, he's a starter. So you better have starting quality. If you can improve that position, then go do it, So, yeah. Jake Shavink says, I'm on board. No guarantees with the draft picks in 24. I love Bullard, but you never know. So he's probably a little closer to you there, Emilio, liking Bullard a little more than I probably do. So
Right. And then just real quick, Prince had this here, the futures cornerbacks, 4 of them, Kamal Hadden, Kalen King, Caleb Haynes, Isaiah Dunn. I do like Kamal Hadden out of Tennessee, and then Kalen King out of Penn State, who was the number 1 corner and then dropped to the 7th round. So that's depth that, I think that's the kind of stuff we just lose track of in the heat of the moment. You don't see him on the roster. You don't see him on the 53. You see him dressed up for game day. And by the time the scouting, by the time draft comes back around, all right, we need more corners. We need more this, and that. We have 4 of them in the hopper. We got Tyrone Hopper waiting in the hopper for linebacker. And it's like we have, we have a bunch of in line. It's just, are they ready? Have they learned enough in the offseason? I'd rather take somebody that's already gone through the rookie process, been in Green Bay for a year, seen what it's like, been through the NFL process, ready to go year 2. Than having to always rely on a fresh out of rookie draft kind of guy is all.
Yeah. And that's going to do it for hour 1. For those of you listening on the pod, we'll see you on the other side for hour 2. We appreciate y'all.